Hello everyone, my name is Jen and welcome to my weekly reading wrap up here on the Book Refuge. So I read 15 books this week. I read a lot of new releases as well as some upcoming releases, which was really fun because usually I have those more spread out, but this week there was a lot of books either coming out that I was really excited about or they will be coming out and I'm really excited about, so it was a lot of fun. But before we dive into that, I do want to welcome some new channel members, which is great. We had 3 new members this week, so thank you so much. I'm always so honored when people join the channel. It makes me so excited and it makes me so happy because you're just coming into the family. It's great. So we have Candace, who joined at the romantic renegade level. So thank you so much, Candace, also known as Book Addict 10, if you are interested. Then there is Bailey and Charlene, who joined at the Fated Friend level. So thank you all so much for joining. It means so much. If you yourself would like to learn more about channel memberships, there's always a link down below in the description, or you can go to my main page on YouTube and you can find out more about them. So enough of that, because we have a lot of books to talk about. I didn't know if we'd have that many books to talk about because I read a pretty big one this week, so I didn't know if we'd be getting to that, but we did. So let's go ahead and dive in. And to start off with, I have 2 arcs to talk about. So the first one is Call Me Crazy by Melanie Harlow, which I believe comes out on Tuesday. I think it comes out on Tuesday. This is book 3 in the Bellamy Creek series. I'm a member of Melanie's ARC team, which it has been really fun for me. I've got to read arcs of all 3 of these books, and it's been really fun. All of her more recent series all kind of lead back to the Cloverleaf Farms, where they have like strings connecting it. This one was an enemies to lovers, arranged marriage, baby plan kind of book. So there's a lot of things going on with this one. We have, I think it's Enzo, who he needs to get married if he wants to be the head of his family company, which is an interesting situation in modern day. It's always a little squeaky to me how it will work unless they're like uber rich people. But in this one, literally his dad just believes that he'll be more stable if he's married, which then forces him into an arranged marriage because he's going to propose to his girlfriend, who number one is like 20 years old. He's 34, 35, and his girlfriend is like 20 years old, which I love an age gap. So I was like, ooh, that's interesting. But she's like, dude, we've only been dating for a couple of months and I thought we were just messing around. Like, I don't want to marry you for this. So it happens to be that one of his high school enemies overhears this, and it's a girl, and she really wants a baby, and she wasted 5 years of her life with a loser who was never going to marry her, and so she decides, she's like, hey, I'll marry you for a certain amount of time. We'll decide it between ourselves if you will help me have a baby. But the start of it is like, she doesn't want them to do it by having sex. She wants him to donate, which of course, guys, I don't even know why we made that a thing in the front, because we knew they were going to fuck. Like, we knew they were going to fuck. So this was difficult because I ended up giving this 4 stars because Melanie's books, they're funny, they're exciting, they're a quick book to read. I love Melanie's books, but the thing is, I haven't been in the mood for this kind of book, but I needed to kind of read it right away because when it's due. And so my gut reaction, I wanted to give this book like a 3-star because it was fun, it was okay. But the characters were very frustrating. I knew exactly what was going to happen in this book from the jump. And so there wasn't anything super exciting about it. I really just plowed my way through it. There was some fun, dirty sex. Melanie has some fun. She will put in just like that bedroom kink, where we like maybe role play a scenario or something, which is fun. And I just haven't been in the mood for that kind of thing where like, I know from the jump the miscommunication is going to ruin them. Like, I knew it from chapter 1, what the issues were going to be, how it was going to go. So that isn't a bad thing if this is exactly what you're looking for, but it just wasn't what I was looking for this week. And coming off of some of the really deep and amazing romances I read the week before, it just wasn't working for me, right? It just wasn't doing it for me. So I did end up giving it 4 stars because I knew I was in a mood. I knew that if I had been in a mood for a romantic comedy, I would have enjoyed this a lot. So I did give it 4 stars, and in my review I explain all that because sometimes I generally rate 80% on enjoyment, 20% on how the book is written. And this book, it is written that you would enjoy it. And I would put it on like a fun rom-com or a baby plan situation, right? I would do that. So I gave it 4 stars, even though I like wasn't 100% feeling it. Then I got to read an arc of The Intimacy Experiment by Rosie Danon. This is the follow-up to The Roommate. It's a companion novel. I don't think you would have needed to read The Roommate, although if you did read The Roommate and really loved it and maybe realized some of the problems that it had with after the fact, because I think that book, it got really hyped, it got promoted really well. It was an interesting premise. That one is a male porn star and this kind of uptight, not completely like virginal, but pretty like innocent woman. And it was interesting. This one is about the ex-girlfriend slash like porn partner of Josh from the first one. Her name is Naomi, and it's been a few years since the first book, and she is trying to like shift in her career. She's now a sex educator. She's taking classes about it, and she's trying to find a job, and no one wants to hire her because everyone knows her as the porn star. However, we didn't have a lot of woe is me about that, which I really appreciated, because it's like Naomi knows what she did and the decisions that she made, and she is used to the attitude she gets. But she also is like, but I have valuable information to share, which is being proven by their website and the things that happened in the first book. So like, I don't want to spoil that book, but also this book is still a couple months from coming out. I believe it comes out in April, so I don't want to talk too in depth about it. I may talk more about it when it's closer to coming out, so I don't want to get too gung-ho about it right now, but I really loved it. So anyway, the point being is it's Naomi, and she ends up being asked at a business, she goes to like a business conference, and she ends up being approached by a rabbi. He's part of I think it's like a Reform Jewish synagogue, I think, and he's looking for someone to do a modern intimacy training, teaching, to like bring new people in to his synagogue. And she's like, no way is that going to work out. And he's like, well, is anyone else offering you a job? Because I can offer you a job where you will get to practice this seminar and do this, and I think it will be very helpful. And so it ends up being a seminar that like, it is about intimacy and how you create it and what it looks like. And what I love about this book, because I don't want to spoil this one, I did give this 5 stars. I cried quite a few times in this. I think his name is Ethan. Is it Ethan? It's Ethan. I loved him. I loved this hero. He is written so well. Like, oh my God. A lot of the issues I had with the first one, where I just felt like they were very immature. That was my biggest thing, is I felt like for their age and who they were, I felt like Clara was way too innocent, and I felt like Josh was just a little too dumb. I still adore them, but now I would probably rate that book like a 4 star. Whereas this one, I would still classify this as women's fiction, but it really is about the intimacy part of it. It really is. And it was so beautiful. It was so beautiful. And the conversations that were being had and the things we were looking at, like, I didn't feel like I was being preached at, but I felt like I was getting to see how these people were dealing with it and their interpretation on certain things. And if you want a hero that is just so precious and respectful, and anytime he might be too forward about something, they talk about it instead of like Naomi, who has been around the block. She doesn't like jump to conclusions with him. And so that's just what I want to say for this book, is that if you wanted more sex from the first one, you're not going to find it here. Like, this isn't a smuttier book than the first one, because that was a problem I had in the first one, is this was a book about this woman learning her body and we didn't do anything with it. This one is about intimacy, and the fear Naomi has, because she's a confident, well put together woman. She's not having a lot of issues, but she still has parts of her that are insecure, and that, oh, there's some things I just can't talk about yet because I don't want to spoil them. But I do want to talk about it more when this book is out. But I really enjoyed it. I had such a good time. And I'm talking too long about each book. We've only done 2 books and I'm 10 minutes in, so we need to keep going. So I love that. I give it 5 stars. Then I read the Midwinter Mail Order Bride by Kati Wilde. This is a book that I've seen quite a few of my friends read. It's only a little over 100 pages. And I guess it's a part of like a series that Kati did. And I did buy a couple of the other ones too to check out. But this is about this dude. He is the new like king of their area. And people have just been sending him women to keep him happy. Is what I interpreted it as. And he overhears that and finds out. And he gets really pissed off, because he realizes all these women are terrified of him, but they're like sacrificing themselves to him. And he's like, that's bullshit. I don't want that to happen. So literally like an advertisement was put out for someone who is willing to be his bride. And there's this woman who gets sent to him to be his bride. And he's like, I'm not taking any more sacrifices to be my wife. And they end up going on an adventure together. Like, it's not very long, so I don't want to say anything else. It was really fun. I get it. This book could have easily been a full story. And this is how it is, man. Like, novellas, they don't usually get a full rating. Like, I just can't hold them up to the same thing as I would another book. Like, I wanted a full story out of this one because the elements of the world were very interesting. There just wasn't enough story for these characters to work for me. But I still had a fun time in the getaway. Everyone liked it. And he is such a great hero. He really is, because he's just so like hurt that people think that about him. And he's hurt that they assume he's such an evil guy when he's there to help them, kind of, you know? So it was very interesting. And I ended up giving it 4 stars, and it was good. It just wasn't completely what I was wanting. Then I read Between Us by Cheyenne Cierra. This I got as a recommendation from Mary from More to Mary. So thanks, girlfriend. She did a video about, I think that it was just her January wrap up. But I love Mary's recommendations. I found some of my favorite book series because of her, like Cora Riley I found because of her. So I try to pay attention. This one I was very interested in because it had a trope that I love and a trope that I didn't love. And Mary really liked it. Now, one thing too, and I'm not saying this to disparage her, so be nice. Mary doesn't mind if there is cheating in her books, as long as they all work out, right? And I kind of get what she means, because she's like, because I'm fascinated by dark romance, I wonder how some things can be an HEA. And it is interesting when you go into a book knowing that there's going to be some kind of cheating in it, how it's going to end up as an HEA. And in the case of this one, it was very interesting. Okay, so Between Us. This is an older woman and her son's best friend. And she had her son when she was only 16 years old. She's been with her husband that whole time. They're in a very emotionally abusive relationship, okay? And he's gone a lot of the times. And it's pretty clear, like, I wouldn't consider this a spoiler because it's pretty clear to everyone that he's cheating on her. Like, it's really clear. Not that one cheating makes another cheating okay. But anyway, then there is her son's best friend who... he's been in love with her for a while. So this is how it is. Like, he's 18 and she's 32, 33. So it's a thing, but she's still really young and beautiful. She gets a lot of shade from the ladies in the neighborhood because she's still young and beautiful, and she does kind of dress like it. Like, she dresses like it. And people are just kind of petty about it. But anyway, it was a really interesting story. The way that their relationship builds and how it goes, and how we deal with the fact that she's married and there are reasons why she's afraid to leave her husband. And then like her son and how he's going to react to it. It was all very interesting. So I ended up giving it 4 stars. It may have been more like a 3.5, 3.75, but it was outside my comfort zone. So I want to leave some stuff for that. I do love older women romances, but I don't like that she was married. And then for the issues that this marriage was having, why they were still together was very frustrating for me. So there is trigger warnings for, you know, emotional abuse. And I mean, if cheating is a trigger for you, I want to tell you that, like, that's a trigger, as well as like thoughts of self-harm. There's nothing acted out in this one, but we see some diary entries where some things are talked about. So just want to put that out there. Okay? Okay. All right. Then I should talk about this because I put it in the wrong spot. I read A Rakes Vow by Stephanie Lawrence. This is the next book in the Sinster series. I'm loving this series. I actually just got my copy in the mail. So here's the back of this one. This one is Vain and Patience. I think it's Patience, yeah. And Vain is one of the brothers that vows never to marry. I mean, so many of them vow that. And then he ends up meeting Patience, who, okay, here's the thing. I'm not 100% sure. Here was a setup of this one. Here we go. Let me just read that because I can't tell you that I totally followed what the plot in this one was, but I still had a good time. I know that sounds weird, but if you've read a Stephanie Lawrence book, I think you know what I mean. So Vane's Sinster always knew which way the wind was blowing, and it was headed in a marrying direction. The other Sinster men might not mind stepping up to the altar, but Vane never wanted to be leg-shackled to any woman, no matter how comely. Bellamy Hall seemed like the perfect place to temporarily hide from London's husband hunters, but when he encounters irresistible Patience Devington, Vane realized he met his match, and soon he had more than seduction on his mind. Patience wasn't about to succumb to Vane's sensuous propositions. Yes, his kisses left her dizzy, his caresses made her melt, but he was arrogant, presumptuous, and, despite his protests, bound to be unfaithful. Just like every other man, Patience had promised herself that she'd never become vulnerable to a broken heart, but was this one vow that was meant to be broken. So, there's that. I believe that Bellamy Hall is like his godmother. His godmother, Minnie, lives there, and there's been a thief there. So when he ends up staying there, Patience is his godmother's niece, I think. Correct me if I'm wrong. There's a lot of relationships. So they've never met, but she's his godmother or something like that. And there's a thief there, so he ends up staying, and her and him, they have a thing. And I love how Stephanie Lawrence writes her men, because they may all have these vows never to marry, and then the minute that they meet their woman, it's almost like a fated mate thing. And I love that. I love that element of like fated mate when it is in a historical romance. So I ended up giving this one 4 stars, but I had a wonderful time with it, and I read the third one too, which we'll get to in a little bit, and I'm just loving her books. Next I get to read Demon's book, which I'm very excited about, because Juliet and Jesson both gave me a list of which Sinsters were their favorite, and I know she likes Demon, and then Gabriel is Juliet's favorite, so I'm very excited to get to that one, but I'm having a great time. That's actually 2 of her books sitting over there, so I've been having a good time with these. Then I read A Court of Silver Flames by Sarah J. Maas. And I have an entire spoiler reading vlog for this where I am first reading the book, and then there's about 15 minutes at the end where I talk about my final thoughts. So I will link that up above. You can go watch that. Basic overview, I gave this 6 stars. I cannot fully express how much I felt seen by this book. Nesta's relationship to her deceased father, to her family members, to herself. I've never fully felt the kind of self-loathing that this character feels for herself, but I felt pieces of it, especially in regards to a relationship with a father who has let you down. It's hard. Like, it is fucking hard, okay? And I love her. I love her. I love the romance with Cassian. I love how it builds upon itself. I love the things we're seeing happen in Prythian. It's fucking brilliant. It's brilliant. And I know there's issues with the 2. I'm not saying it's perfect, because no book is perfect. But it was perfect for me. And it was perfectly what I wanted it to be. And I can't wait to see, like, I'm very excited the, like, turn that it's taking and where this is going. And the amount of time that Nesta suffers, like, it's a lot and it's painful and it's hard to see. But she couldn't just be okay. Like, she couldn't just be okay. This was going to take some work. And I really think it's clear, like, you will, there's a note by Cierra, and I've seen her talk about this, that she was going through some serious depression and feelings while she was writing this book. And I loved that Nesta will have these things where everything seems fine, and then one little thing will snap her and she regresses, or this thing will happen and regresses. Like, that is how it goes. That is how I've seen depression in my friends and family. It's how I've seen it in, you know, I've read about it and seen it before. And though I've never experienced the level of this depression, I can only imagine what it must be like if you're feeling it. And just, wow. So I love this. It was 6 stars. I don't even fucking care. This is not a place to come to if you want, like, to badmouth Sarah J. Maas. Like, I just don't know what else to say. Like, I only have great things to say. I'm here for the discussion and the nitpicky of stuff. I love theories. I love all that. But if we're here to just say that it's trash, like, I disagree and you're fucking wrong. So there we go. Move on by. Because I could give you 101 reasons why this book was perfection for me personally. It was great. Then I read another new release. I read After Rain Falls by C.E. Reiss. So this was the follow-up to Follow the River, which got a lot of controversy because of how the author wrote the author's note saying that trigger warnings, just assume all the trigger warnings are here. Some people took this very harshly and were like, bitch, you can't tell us what's important or not. I see it both ways. I personally think that you should be able to find a detailed list of trigger warnings if you want them to, but I also understand as an author and a reader, let me speak as a reader who reads a lot of dark romance. If it's in a dark romance category, number one, I'm already knowing that there's going to be triggers, because it wouldn't be in dark romance if there were no triggers at all. Then it would just be like, it's a book. It's a contemporary romance, you know, if there were no triggers at all. And then also when an author says, like, if there's any trigger warnings at all, assume they're in here. I know what that means. So while the note the author wrote in the front of the first one, I can get why it would seem condescending, she wasn't wrong with how she explained it. So I don't know. I just don't take it as offensively as some people want to make it. I knew what the author meant by the note. And though I, like, rolled my eyes a little bit, I'm like, honey, you shouldn't have worded it that way because you're going to make people mad. I was just like, well, I know what I'm in for. And because I knew what the story was about, I was like, the trigger warnings that are problems for me aren't going to be in this book, because the trigger warnings that I have don't exist between a male-male couple. So I knew I was going to be okay. But this is a follow-up. There's not too much to say about this without spoiling the first one. If you read the first one, you know there was a big cliffhanger in the relationship. What I will say is kind of my issues with this one is that there was another character added in that made no sense for them to be in here for me. There is this, like, thriller aspect to the book that I didn't really enjoy. I wanted it to be more about us working through our problems and not about actually having to worry about this person coming for us. And the romance was super frustrating. So to me, it didn't have anything to do with the trigger warnings there were that bothered me. It had to do with, I just didn't like where the story was going. And so, while the first one was a 4.5, almost a 5-star for me, because it was very insular. It was about these two characters having to, like, fight it and fuck it out. Like, that is what happened in that one. This one, we added too many people and too many other things to it. And so it was a 3.5 for me. And I think I rated it as a 3 on Goodreads because it was getting super high ratings. And I was like, nah, didn't like it. Then I read Into the Fire by Mia West. Okay, this one I got the pack of all of the novellas because Into the Fire is actually like a series of post-Roman Empire, but still like Romanesque. And it's a male-male romance between a blacksmith and a soldier. And so the soldier's coming back from war and he's going back to his home where he was kind of raised around this blacksmith, and both of these boys were like adopted by this blacksmith baby, basically. And the blacksmith, he was the younger of the two, but now he's this like beast of a man, just big and sexy and husky and all that. And he had a thing for him when they were young. But he's never been with a man. He actually had a wife and child, and they were recently killed by bandits because the place where he lives is really dangerous. And the only weapon he has left is his hammer for his forge, because when they knocked him out, he ended up passing out on top of his hammer, and it's the only thing he has left. So in the night, this soldier is making his way home, and he ends up stumbling across it and spooking the guy, and so he like hits him or whatever, and then he realizes who it is, and so he starts nursing his friend back to health that he beat. And while he's nursing him back to health, he's like, oh my gosh, he's so beautiful. Now, while his friend was away at war, he is very used to men doing stuff together, because he's like, when you're in a long campaign, you would fuck sometimes. And so it's this very like fluid thing. And so while his friend is taking care of him, there is like bathing scenes, and there is only one bed scenes, and things evolve. So this book, Into the Fire, actually has 10 little novellas that are each about like 70 to 90 pages each of their life together, and actually spans a really long time. And so I put this whole book on here, but I ended up reading 5 out of the 10, and then I got a little bored just because it was the same stuff. And it's actually like pretty low angst. There are a few like survival situations in it, but it's mostly them like loving each other and fucking a lot, and it was great. And there's iron shackles used sometimes, and it was just really sweet. And so it was a historical Roman romance of these two men, and I liked it. And so I gave it 4 stars. And then I kind of went on a little bit of a male binge. As you can tell, I read After the Rain, Into the Fire, and then I read Someone to Hold by April Wilson. Now, I forgot about this book because the first one, Someone to Love, this was a male romance. It was a police detective and this young, kind of like spoiled socialite who was in his 20s, and this cop is like 42, and they meet on a murder investigation in the first one, and they start to fall in love. And now the cop, he's never been with a man before, but he also hasn't really been with women either. And so he's surprised by all these feelings, but like nobody else is. So I loved that because there's like a murder mystery element happening, but his sexuality was a pretty low angst part of it. Like it was him coming out to some people and then being like, yeah, I get that. You're probably into men. That makes sense. And so it was really cool. I don't usually love one where there's more of a like more feminine part of the couple. Like I've read on one hand how many of those, but I love this one because it was such a sweet romance. And I love this follow-up one, which actually seems like is just the beginning of a whole series for them. And I didn't expect that, and I'm very excited to read more, but I didn't know when this was coming out because I read that first one like 2 years ago before this one came out. And then I was like, oh my gosh, this book is out, because it came up in my recommended books since I had read the other one before. So I ended up giving this 4 stars. I really loved it. It was sweet. So I had a great time. Then I read Something More by Roxanne Riley. So this was a bisexual reverse harem, but it was only 120 pages, and I wanted it to be a whole book. So this one, I guess, is actually a sequel. This is another one I bought because of e-reader IQ. And it's about this girl and this guy who are best friends, but she thinks he's gay, which he's bisexual, but she's never seen him with a man, and she assumes that he's gay. And then there's this gay couple who are not monogamous. They will sleep with whoever and any number amount. And they're there at this resort for vacation, and they end up hitting on both of these people, and there's a miscommunication, but we all end up fucking together, and it was great, and then we end up married. What? So my biggest problem is that I was really interested in the setup of this story and the like how we would all love each other and how it would go, and then it was only 120 pages, and I'm like, you can't have this many dicks for that quickly. And there's no sequel because it's a standalone novella. So I gave 3 stars. Had potential, but didn't work. Then I read Her Wicked Marquess by Stacy Reid. This I was very excited to read because it's a follow-up to My Darling Duke, which I really, really loved. I listened to this on audio. this book is about Marianne Fitzwilliam, and she is about to be forced to marry this really, like, it's not even so much that he's too old. He's a pig. Like, she catches him fucking someone, and he finishes fucking the person in front of her, and then is like, we're gonna be married soon. So the thing of him being, like, too old for her, that's not even the problem. It's that he's disgusting. And is like that. Because he's handsome and suave, but he's a pig. And then there is Nicholas St. Ives, the Marquess of Rothbury, who is seen climbing out of a chamber, and she pretends that it's hers. So the whole premise of this series, this is the sinful wallflowers, and it's these women trying to make their own fortune and, like, to make their lives happen. And that's what happened in the first one. The thing with this is, so she says that it's his bedroom that he crawled out of. But then her family is going to try to make him marry her for doing that. So she backs off of it. She totally chickens out. And she's like, no, never mind. I lied because I didn't want you to marry this guy. And her family's like, what the fuck? You can't lie about that. And I'm like, yeah. So then she meets Nicholas, and Nicholas is like, there are people after me. And now that you have lied, now I need to protect you, because if people think I'm actually sleeping with you, they might come and kill you or hurt you in some way to get back at me. So now he starts sneaking in her window at night to, like, guard her and check on her. It's kind of interesting. But my biggest issue with this is that Marianne did not show the same spirit or determination that our heroine from the first book did, who was ballsy as hell and claimed that she was marrying this duke to use his clout to save her family. And Marianne, she makes this bold gesture and immediately chickens out. And I didn't really respect her after that. What I did love is I really loved Nicholas. He has this revenge plan that kind of gets in our way a lot, but I really liked him. He was very sweet. He was very swoony. He was very protective. So I don't know. I ended up giving it a 4-star, but it's probably a 3.5 star. But, you know, sometimes we make concessions like that. Yay! Then I got to read an ARC for The Architect by Nikki Sloane. I was very excited to read this book. I was lucky enough to get an ARC of this. I am on Nikki Sloane's ARC team now too, which is pretty exciting. I'm not gonna lie. That was really exciting. And I did give this 4.5 stars. So this one is so hard to explain because I don't feel like the blurb does a great job. I feel like the blurb sets it up, like, way different than it happens in the story. And so I don't know how to explain this, but this one comes out on Tuesday, so it comes out really soon. It's the 3rd book in the Nashville Neighborhood series. So this girl, the woman in this, Lilith, she's like 24, and she's friends with Cassidy, who is the girl from the first one who marries the doctor and everything. And she lives in this neighborhood, and her neighbor, whose name is Clay, he ends up rescuing a cat. And so Lilith, she's a veterinary technician, and so he travels a lot, and they end up, like, adopting this cat together, but it's gonna live at his house because she doesn't have the room. And then she's going to, like, go over and take care of the cat while he's gone. So when he's gone one day, she hears a crash happen downstairs. So she thinks maybe the cat got into this. She goes downstairs and discovers that he makes kinky BDSM furniture. Just, like, works of art. He makes St. Andrew's cross, there's spanking bench, there's these low tables, and she's just like, oh my god, I want to use these with him. So when he comes home, and this is like first 2 chapters of the book, I'm just trying to tell you the setup, and then I'm not going to really say anymore because the blurb spoils stuff. I don't know what else to say because I wouldn't have known it was going this way. The blurb makes it sound like they're already in a relationship at the start of this book, but you literally get to see their relationship start. So when he comes home from his trip, she's waiting for him in his office, in his desk chair, naked. And he's like, damn, girl, I was planning to seduce you and you beat me to the jump. And so Clay, he is a very controlling dom in some sexy ways. And he has to travel a lot. So they agree to date with no feelings. So, like, they're not going to date, but they're going to be sex buddies. But he has to travel a lot. So he ends up enlisting a friend of his named Mr. E. Mr. E or Mr. T? Mr. T. Which she's like, Mystery? And he's like, no, Mr. T. And he's only going to call you L. To be his, like, hands and lips and dick for him while he's gone. So he will call them on Skype. And he'll be like, but you're not going to talk to him. You're talking to me. And he's going to do what I want to you. So that's how this menage situation starts, is that it's a BDSM where he's in control of both of them because he is being Mr. T. However, L and Mr. T, they start to have this connection and start to get really frustrated that he won't let them talk outside of the scene at all. And then that's kind of the setup for this book. I really like this. I love Nikki Sloane's books. I love it. I love it. I love it. However, biggest issues. The same thing I'll say about previous ones. So this book got delayed a little bit because Nikki had to rewrite some parts of it from what I got in, because I was already approved to read the ARC. And then the ARC got pushed back because the release got pushed back like 2 weeks, I think, because she needed to rework some things. I think she needed to work some more because, without spoiling anything, but I'll just say this, when you have, anytime you have more than 2 in a couple and you're involving other people in this, you need more chapters. There was not enough. Like, as soon as we started to get into some of the really emotional work, it was over and it was an HEA. And that was not enough for me, for there to be these 3. Like, we had barely got past the main conflict, like, and it was done. So I just didn't believe the HEA. I believed that they were going to happily keep having sex together. Also, this is MFM, which I am also not a fan of. But I did know that it was going to be MFM. So I knew that. I'm not a fan, and I'm not going to pretend that I'm not, because I like swords to cross in my situations. So I ended up giving it a 4.5 because it's still, she makes it emotional for me, and I was here for it. But I couldn't give it a 5-star because I just was missing those pieces. Like, I put the book down and I was just a little unsatisfied. Whereas other Nikki Sloane books, there is all this conflict, and then when it's done, I'm like, ah. And this one, I just was a little unsatisfied. So there it is. There it is. Then I got to read Bride of the Frontier. This is a new release by Hayley Faiman. I will have the physical book in my hands so soon, and I cannot wait. This is the 3rd book in the Prophecy of the Sister series, which I love. It's a fantasy romance series, pretty smutty. It's fated mates. And there's this prophecy about these 4 sisters who will be paired with the world's strongest warriors. And once those 4 sisters have found their mate and they're married and in love, they will fully come into their powers and be able to kind of like, we don't know yet because we're only on the 3rd sister. And this one is about Birdie and Colton. And she gets pulled back to, or across the universe or wherever, to this frontier world that reminds me a little of a Westworld without the robots and everything. And I know one of the things I've said is I was like, the other 2 books in the series, one of them is a medieval lord and one of them is a Viking king. And I was like, how is this going to work with a frontier world? Well, I'll say it this way. Much like England had its own vibe going on and America had its own vibe going on, these 2 places can coexist on the same earth and have completely different, like, things set up. Because this is an alternate dimension. Like, there's no United States, there's no England, Britain, whatever. They all have their own names and everything. So that's how it's, like, set up, basically. So just like all the others, Birdie doesn't know where her sisters are. Her mother has had a dream, though, about the sisters, and, like, they're happy and at peace and they're in a good place. And then she happens to be driving to a new job because she's a photographer, and she ends up wandering around the desert. And this happens to be the desert near Colton's home, and so she gets brought in, and like all the others, he sees her, and it's like he gets slammed in the chest, and he's like, oh my gosh, and so he's a little bit terrified of it. This hero, he's a widower, He lost his wife and child. This one has magical lions. He can communicate telepathically with both his horse and with these magical lions who help protect his world, which I'm like, wow, I love it. And then, but they also do like burn witches at the stake in his world, but yet he has a few that he works with. So I'm a little bit like, we're a little bit hypocritical of this. Okay. So he's sure that she's a witch, and then we end up getting someone to explain the prophecy, and then it's like, no, this is going to be amazing. So it was great. I gave it 5 stars still. I don't care. It's probably not quite a 5-star, but I love this series, and I can't wait to see about the next sister. I don't know what the title of that one is yet, but I was really intrigued about how Bride of the Frontier would work, and I was happy about how this worked out. So I'm excited for more. Just 2 left. So then I got to read Wildfire by Lynn Burke. This is the 3rd book in, I can't remember what the series is called, but they all have wild in it. The first 2, if you'll remember, I read those actually at the beginning of this month. Wilderness and Wildling, I read at the beginning of the month. Those both had a ton of trigger warnings in them. This one was actually like a bit lighter of a story compared to the other 2. So this book is actually about the children of the other 2 couples. It is about the daughter of the couple from the first book and the son of the couple from the 2nd book. And the daughter, her name is Annie. She happens to be a romance novelist. And she used to be in love with Roan. And they had a mishap when they were young. She ended up getting hurt. And so they ended up like, they were kind of going to date, and then it like didn't work out. And she actually went away to go to college, and that's where she became like a writer. And so now she's staying at her family's old cabin, which is the cabin where her parents like, you know, probably made her, I would assume. And she's going to go there on like a writing retreat, which is really great. So her mother, who is the like flyer, like she flies a prop plane, her and her husband have a business doing that. She stops at the other family's home and tells Roan, hey, our daughter's going to be at the cabin, which is only like 4 miles away. It's a couple days walk away. It must be more than 4 miles because it's a couple days walk. And he's like, she's going to be there for a month writing. You should go see her. And he's like, she doesn't want to see me. And the mother's like, she does though. She just doesn't know it. And so he decides to go and see her. There are some survival situations still, like in some of the others, but there aren't any of the trigger warnings that are in the first ones. Like, there's not dubious consent, and there's not, well, that's not true. Okay, I lied. Someone is asleep and does something to someone, but everybody's willing. This is not a Duke and I situation. Someone feverly, in a fever, uses their dick, and the other person's happy about it. So I do want to say that that's probably dubious consent, but I promise you it's not uncomfortable. Sorry. I was like, there's no trigger warning. So like, well, I should probably tell you about that, but it was really hot. And it wasn't where you're feeling like, oh, that's inappropriate. So anyway, fever kisses, we'll call it. And it was just really great. These 2, like, it was kind of a second chance romance, and they were also like childhood friends, and I liked how it worked out. And I don't know if there's more in this series. This kind of would have worked as like a trilogy because it's the 2 couples and then their kids. So I'm not sure what's next by Lynn Burke, but I really enjoyed it. I gave this 4 stars and I had a fun time. And then the last book I want to talk about, I just finished before I filmed this. I finished it while I was getting ready, which, by the way, not to brag, but I tried a new eye palette and I'm loving it. That orange red looks so good with my eyes. Anyway, I gotta show off now and then. I read Scandal's Bride by Stephanie Lawrence, which is the 3rd book in the sister series. This is about Richard, who's also called Scandal. He is the stepson. He's the one who, he was the bastard, basically, the one born. And then Elena was just like, nope, I want him. It's okay that this was an indiscretion. Like, I want him in my life. And yeah, this one was tough, guys. This one was tough because, speaking of dubious consent, this heroine rapes scandal. Like, I'm saying the word, it happens. So this heroine, her name is, wow, I just forgot her name, even though I just read this book. What's her name? Scandal and, nope, I forgot her name. But she's from this place called the Vale, which is always led by a woman who always has a daughter who then she raises to lead it. And she is supposed to get an inheritance from someone. And it ends up being that unless she marries Vane's sister, who her guardian thought would be a good match for her, because he also knows that guy somehow too. I don't know if it's his, I don't know how he's related to him, not sure. And she speaks to her lady, she's witchy, they literally call her a witch all the time, because she does commune with spirit, the lady and everything. And the lady tells her that yes, he will be the father of your children, but doesn't say husband, even though it was children, which gets pointed out to her by Scandal later. And so because she wants to have a child by him but doesn't want him involved in her life or trying to make decisions for where she's from, she drugs him for she drugs him the first night, sneaks into his room and fucks him and lets him fuck her. He isn't fully like out the way she wanted him to be. So the next day he starts remembering things and he's like, So the next night though, he doesn't drink the whiskey that she's drugged. So he's awake, fully cognizant when she sneaks in his bed and they fuck, and then she leaves, and when he sees her at breakfast the next day, she's not acting like they did anything. So he's like, something's up. So the third night, he's really paying attention, and he tries to get her to admit what she's doing by getting her real sexed up and trying to get her to say what happened. And she still doesn't fully admit it. So then he's not mad that she drugged him, but I'm telling you, he was 100% raped the first night. And it's very odd how the author went about this, that he's more upset she won't tell him why, and more upset that she would rather sleep with him that way than like be married to him. And so he kind of takes it out of her hands and he's like, I'm going to marry you. I promise never to interfere with this stuff. But like, I want to be your husband. Like, I want to do this. I want to be around for my kids. So if you bring me back to the Vale with you, like, I won't interfere. So it ends up happening. I ended up really liking this book still because Richard is so loving in the way that he helps to make her life better and not interfering but partnering with her, and the way that she slowly hands over trust to him, I really enjoyed. But in the beginning of this book, like, I was just like, wow, this is a choice, because it 100% is an assault, and there's people that warn her away from doing it and she still does it. And then it kind of felt, the way that it works for me, the way that it worked, like, it doesn't work that she rapes him, but the way that the story still works for me is that he figures it out and he's not mad. He's like, no, you're my woman, so it's fine that you did this. Like, I'm going to be with you and you're not going to get away from me. And so it kind of, she's still trapped with him anyway. So it's kind of this thing where, like, you thought you were going to get away with just getting impregnated by him and leaving. No, you're going to marry me and I'm going to be there for my kids. Like, there's no way you're going to have my baby and I'm not going to be there. And so she's trapped in her own thing because he's like, people know that we did this and I'm not going to let you get away from me. And also, by marrying him, she's saving all of those people because they get to keep the inheritance, because otherwise they wouldn't get it if she didn't marry him. So it was strange, guys. I'm not pretending it wasn't. And I completely understand if you don't want to read it. It is... I was messaging my friends. I'm like, is this actually happening? So I ended up giving this 4 stars. Because, and like my friend, like Jesson said, she's like, I like that book for Scandal because he's amazing. And I like this book for Scandal. He was great. He kept me reading. And she won me over because I get her reasons, but I'm still like, but you raped him. And there's something about it of like the power that she takes, but it's still an icky power. And I wish that, like, when she explained it to some people later on about what she was doing, they literally say, well, that was super brave of you. And I'm like, please don't say raping a man is brave. Like, please don't say that. So yeah. But anyway, all right. this was this week's reading wrap up. I hope you really enjoyed it. I hope you'll give some of these a try. Thank you to the new channel members. I'm so happy to have you. And yeah, I'll see you in the next video. Bye.